I started counting the corrections on my third week of classes because by then it was obvious that Serena was paying more attention to my downward dog than anyone else's. And when she leaned in during Shavasana and whispered, "Stay after class, we need to talk about your alignment." With her hand resting on my lower back and her breath warm against my ear, I knew that 38 corrections in 6 weeks meant something far beyond just fixing my warrior pose. I stayed, and what happened after everyone else left changed everything I thought I knew about flexibility, boundaries, and falling completely in love with someone who was supposed to just be teaching me how to breathe. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. It truly helps the channel grow, and I appreciate every single one of you. Now let's get back to the story. I walked into Lotus Yoga Studio on a rainy Monday evening in October because my doctor told me I needed to reduce my stress levels or risk serious health problems. I was 31, working as a corporate lawyer at a firm that demanded 80-hour weeks, and my body was paying the price. Tension headaches, insomnia, anxiety that made my chest tight and my hands shake. My doctor suggested yoga, meditation, anything to counteract the constant pressure. The studio was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and soft lighting and the smell of sandalwood. I felt out of place immediately in my brand new yoga pants and borrowed mat, surrounded by people who clearly knew what they were doing, who moved with grace and confidence while I struggled to remember which pose was which. And then Serena walked in, and I forgot how to breathe for reasons that had nothing to do with anxiety. She was beautiful in a way that seemed effortless. Long dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, warm brown skin that glowed in the soft studio lighting, and a smile that made everyone in the room feel seen. She wore simple black leggings and a fitted tank top, moved with a fluidity that made every gesture look like dance. She was probably in her mid-30s, and carried herself with a calm confidence that I immediately envied. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice low and soothing. "I'm Serena, and I'll be guiding you through our Vinyasa flow class tonight. For those who are new, don't worry about keeping up or doing everything perfectly. Yoga is about listening to your body, not competing with anyone else. Just breathe and let yourself be present." I tried to be present, but mostly I was trying not to fall over. The class moved through poses I'd only seen in magazines, and while everyone else flowed gracefully from one position to the next, I stumbled and wobbled and felt completely incompetent. That's when the correction started. "Let me help you with that warrior too," Serena said, appearing beside me. Her hands were gentle but firm as she adjusted my hips, straightened my back leg, lifted my arms to the proper height. "There. Feel the difference? You want to create length through your whole body." Her touch sent electricity through me, which I told myself was just because I wasn't used to strangers touching me. But when she moved on to help someone else, I found myself hoping she'd come back. She did. Multiple times that first class. Adjusting my downward dog, correcting my chaturanga, showing me the proper alignment for pigeon pose. Each time, her hands were professional but lingering, her voice soft in my ear as she explained what I was doing wrong and how to fix it. By the end of class, during Shavasana when we were supposed to be relaxing, all I could think about was the feeling of her hands on my body and the sound of her voice telling me to breathe deeper, to let go, to surrender. I went back on Wednesday, and Friday, and the following Monday. Within 2 weeks, I was attending every class she taught, which was 4 times a week. I told myself it was because yoga was actually helping with my stress, which was true. But it was also because I couldn't stop thinking about Serena. And she kept correcting me. Constantly. I started keeping track in my head, counting each adjustment, each touch, each whispered instruction. By week 3, I was at 19 corrections. By week 4, 27. By week 6, 38. I noticed things, like how she didn't correct anyone else nearly as often, how her hands would linger on my hips a moment longer than necessary, how she always positioned herself where she could see me in the mirror during class, how her eyes would meet mine during poses and hold for just a beat too long. I started dressing more carefully for class, choosing leggings that fit well, tops that were flattering but appropriate. I practiced at home so I'd do better in class, so maybe she wouldn't need to correct me so much, but somehow I still ended up needing her help with nearly every pose. The other students were friendly, introducing themselves before class, chatting about their days. I learned that most of them had been coming to Serena's classes for years. They loved her teaching style, her patience, her ability to make everyone feel capable, no matter their skill level. "She's the best instructor in the city," a woman named Patricia told me before class one evening. "I've been doing yoga for 20 years and I've never had a teacher as intuitive as Serena. She just knows exactly what each person needs." I wondered what Serena thought I needed, because it seemed like I needed a lot of hands-on correction. Week 6, class number 23, was when everything shifted. We were working on hip openers, deep stretches that required vulnerability and trust. Serena moved through the room as always, offering adjustments and encouragement. When she reached me in pigeon pose, she knelt beside me and placed one hand on my lower back, the other on my hip. "You're holding tension here," she said quietly, pressing gently against my lower back. "Try to breathe into it. Let yourself release." I tried, but I was hyper-aware of her proximity, of her hands on my body, of the way her hair fell forward as she leaned over me. "That's good," she murmured. "Just like that. Breathe." And then, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it, she whispered, "You're doing so well. I love watching you progress." My eyes flew open. Before I could react, she moved on to the next student, leaving me trembling and confused and desperately hoping I hadn't misheard. After class, while everyone was rolling up their mats and chatting, Serena caught my eye from across the room. She smiled, a small private smile that made my stomach flip, and then she turned to talk to another student. I went home that night unable to sleep, replaying that whispered comment over and over, trying to figure out if it meant what I hoped it meant, or if I was reading too much into a simple compliment. The next class was Friday evening. I arrived early, hoping maybe we'd have a chance to talk before class started, but Serena was busy setting up and greeting other students. Class proceeded normally, with the usual corrections and adjustments. Correction 31 during tree pose, 32 during triangle, 33 during a particularly challenging balance sequence. And then, during Shavasana, when everyone was lying still with eyes closed and breathing deeply, I felt Serena approach. She knelt beside my mat, and I felt her hand rest gently on my shoulder. She leaned down, and I felt her breath against my ear as she whispered 5 words that made my heart stop. "Stay after class. We need to talk about your alignment." Then she moved away, continuing her circuit around the room, adjusting blankets and offering gentle touches to help everyone relax deeper into the final resting pose. I couldn't relax. My mind was racing. What did she want to talk about? Was I doing something wrong? Was I making her uncomfortable with my obvious attraction? Was I about to be politely asked to find another yoga studio? Class ended. Students slowly rolled up their mats, gathered their belongings, chatted with Serena about their week. I took my time, moving slowly, pretending to be very focused on folding my mat properly. One by one, everyone left, calling out goodbyes and "see you next times." And then it was just the two of us in the empty studio. Serena walked to the door, locked it, and flipped the sign to closed. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. She turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked nervous. "Thank you for staying," she said, walking slowly toward me. "I've been trying to figure out how to have this conversation for weeks." "Okay," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She stopped a few feet away from me, close enough that I could see the slight tremor in her hands. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Because if I'm wrong about this, if I'm misreading the situation, I need to know now before I say something I can't take back." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "The corrections," she said. "The constant adjustments. I know you've noticed. I know you probably think I'm singling you out, and I am, but not for the reason you might think. I'm not correcting you because you're doing everything wrong. I'm correcting you because it's the only acceptable way I can find to touch you, to be close to you, to have an excuse to whisper in your ear and put my hands on your body without crossing a professional line. But I think I've already crossed that line in my head, and I need to know if you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, or if I need to stop before this goes any further." I stared at her, my brain trying to process what she'd just said. "You've been correcting me because you wanted to touch me?" "Yes," she said quietly. God, yes. From the first class when you walked in looking so lost and nervous and beautiful, I couldn't stop watching you. And every class since then, I've been looking for reasons to be near you, to help you, to touch you in ways that were professional but barely. I've been counting down the minutes until you arrive and dreading the moment you leave. I think about you constantly. And I know this is completely inappropriate. You're my student. I'm your instructor. There's a power dynamic. But I can't keep pretending that what I feel is purely professional. My legs felt weak. I moved to sit on my mat, and she immediately dropped down to sit across from me, maintaining distance but watching me carefully. I've been counting, I said. Every correction, every adjustment, 38 times in 6 weeks. Her eyes widened. You were counting? Because I noticed you didn't correct anyone else as much. Because every time you touched me, I felt it everywhere. Because I've been coming to every single one of your classes hoping you'd notice me, hoping those touches meant something more. She let out a breath that sounded like relief and disbelief mixed together. Really? Really. Serena, I think about you constantly too. I practice at home hoping I'll get better so you won't need to correct me. But then I also hope I keep making mistakes because I don't want you to stop touching me. I'm a complete mess, and yes, I feel way more than a fraction of what you're feeling. She smiled, and it was brilliant and relieved and absolutely beautiful. So what do we do now? I don't know, I admitted. What are the rules about instructors dating students? Technically, the studio doesn't have a policy because it's never come up, but it feels ethically complicated. The power dynamic is real. What if I stopped being your student? I suggested. What if I switched to a different instructor or a different studio? Pain flashed across her face. I don't want you to stop coming to my classes. These past 6 weeks, seeing you 4 times a week, it's been the highlight of my life. The thought of not seeing you makes me feel physically ill. Then we need a different solution, I said. What if we acknowledge the dynamic but address it head on? I'm not a teenager. I'm 31 years old, perfectly capable of making my own decisions. You're not coercing me or pressuring me. We're 2 adults who happen to have met in a yoga class. What are you suggesting? I took a deep breath, feeling brave and terrified in equal measure. I'm suggesting that we go on a date. A real date outside of this studio where we're just 2 women getting to know each other. And we see what happens. And we're honest about the complications and we navigate them together. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw hope and fear and desire all mixed together in her expression. Are you sure? Because if we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. I'm sure, I said. I've been sure since week 2 when you adjusted my warrior pose, and I realized I was falling for you. I just didn't know if you felt the same way. She moved closer, reached out, and took my hand. It was the first time she'd touched me without the excuse of correcting a pose, and it felt different. More intimate, more real. I feel the same way, she said softly. I've been falling for you since that first class. Maybe even since the moment you walked through the door, looking terrified and determined at the same time. So we do this? I asked. We try? We try, she agreed. Our first kiss happened right there on my yoga mat in the empty studio. She leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, but I didn't want to pull away. I wanted this more than I'd wanted anything in years. When her lips met mine, soft and tentative and perfect, I felt something in my chest click into place, like finding a piece of myself I hadn't realized was missing. We took things slowly after that. She insisted we do everything right. I switched to attending classes taught by another instructor at the studio, which broke both our hearts a little but felt like the ethical thing to do. We went on dates, real dates, where we talked for hours and learned each other beyond the student-teacher dynamic. I discovered that Serena had been teaching yoga for 12 years, that she'd gotten into it after a car accident left her with chronic pain, and traditional medicine hadn't helped. That she'd been single for 3 years after a difficult breakup, had been focusing on her career and her students, and hadn't expected to fall for anyone. That she loved terrible horror movies, and made the best homemade curry, and had a cat named Rumi who hated everyone except her. She learned about my demanding job, my stress-filled life, my complicated relationship with my family who didn't understand why I prioritized career over marriage and kids. She met my best friend Sarah, who took one look at how I smiled around Serena and gave her wholehearted approval. 2 months into dating, Serena asked me to move in with her. It felt fast, but also completely right. Her apartment became our apartment. Her cat became our cat. Her life became woven into mine until I couldn't remember what it felt like to not have her there. We still practiced yoga together, but now it was in her living room with just the two of us, and the corrections came with kisses and laughter. She taught me how to do headstands and arm balances, how to breathe through difficult poses, how to find stillness in the chaos. And I taught her that it was okay to be vulnerable, to let someone take care of her for once, to accept love without feeling like she had to earn it. 6 months after that first whispered, "Stay after class," she took me back to the studio late one evening when it was empty. We rolled out mats in the same spot where we'd had that first conversation, where everything had changed. "I've been thinking about alignment," she said, and I laughed because that's how this whole thing had started. Not body alignment, life alignment. And I think I was misaligned for years before you walked into my class. I was going through the motions, teaching people how to breathe and stretch and find peace, but I'd forgotten how to do those things myself. You changed that. You reminded me what it feels like to be truly present, to be seen, to be loved exactly as I am. She pulled a small box from her pocket and my breath caught. "I know it's only been 6 months," she continued. "I know people will say it's too fast. But when you know, you know. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life correcting your form and kissing you and building a life with you. So will you marry me?" I was crying and laughing and saying yes before she even finished the question. We got married 8 months later in that same yoga studio, surrounded by friends and family and students who'd watched our story unfold. My parents came, despite their reservations, and by the end of the night my mother was crying happy tears and telling Serena she'd never seen me so relaxed and joyful. Serena's vows included a promise to correct my alignment for the rest of our lives, in yoga and in everything else, which made everyone laugh. Mine included a promise to keep needing her corrections, which made her cry. That was 4 years ago. Now we own the yoga studio together. I left the law firm, took a massive pay cut to work as a legal consultant with flexible hours, and started teaching beginner yoga classes twice a week. I'm not as skilled as Serena, but I understand what it's like to walk into a studio feeling lost and stressed and desperate for something to change. We still practice together every morning in our home studio, and yes, she still corrects my form constantly. But now the corrections come with kisses and inside jokes and the deep intimacy of two people who know each other completely. She walks into our bedroom now where I'm attempting a challenging arm balance and immediately starts laughing. "Your alignment is terrible," she says, coming over to adjust my shoulders. "I know," I reply. "That's why I need a really good instructor." "Lucky for you, I know one," she says, kissing me until I lose my balance and we both tumble onto the bed, laughing. "How many corrections is that today?" I ask. "I stopped counting," she says, "because I plan to keep correcting you every single day for the rest of our lives." "Promise?" "Promise," she says, and kisses me again. This is my story. The story of how 38 corrections in 6 weeks became a lifetime of adjustments, improvements, and love. The story of how a whispered "stay after class" changed everything. The story of how sometimes the person teaching you how to breathe is also the person who takes your breath away. And I'm so grateful I stayed. So grateful I was brave enough to be honest about what I felt. So grateful for every single correction, every touch, every moment that led us here. Serena says the goal of yoga is to find balance, to align body and mind and spirit. And I found that. Not just in the poses, but in my life. In our life together. In this perfectly aligned love that started with a simple correction and became everything I never knew I needed. I wouldn't change a single adjustment.